In this video, we're sitting down with Pascal, the winner of the April Brewers Cup, South Africa. Welcome, my name is Patrik and this is Coffee with April. For this episode, we're going to go back to the summer and the South African edition of the April Brewers Cup. We admit it was a few months ago, but we just recently had the opportunity to sit down with the winner of the April Brewers Cup, Pascal, where he shares a little bit of, first of all, coffee scene in South Africa, which for me was really interesting because it's something that I haven't experienced before, but also, of course, that winning recipe and a little bit of his kind of everyday as a business owner in the South African coffee scene. So that's what this video about. The April Brewers Cup, for those of you that don't know, is a competition built around the April Brewers, where we go to different cities and countries around the world, and we choose different competitors that all get the opportunity to use the April Brewer to brew the same coffee, present that coffee, and see who is the best brewer using that April Brewer, right? So the South African edition was one of many competitions that we've been holding or hosting throughout the year, and it's been one of the most successful as well. We should note for the sake of this video as well that the competition was only made possible because of the local organizer Coffee Magazine. Without the local organizers that we have around the world of the competition, we wouldn't be able to do it. So a big thank you to them, a big thank you to all of the competitors, volunteers, all the visitors. It was amazing to connect with that local coffee community. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna jump over to Pascal, and he's gonna show the recipe that he used winning the April Brewers Cup. After that, we're going to segue directly into a Zoom call, a little bit of an interview that me and him had together just a few weeks ago.
How's it? My name's Pascal, and I have the honor of sharing my April Brewers Cup recipe from South Africa with you guys here today. The coffee I'll be using is a washed IE from the Aldovizio farm in Colombia, farmed by the famous Nesta Lasso. We roasted this 2 weeks ago, so I think it should be tasting spot on today. I'll start by wetting my filter paper and heating up my brewer. I did this on the comp stage just to maintain a constant temperature of the brewer. Next, I'll be adding 16.5 grams of ground coffee. This is ground at 26 clicks on the Comandante. My first pour will be a 60 gram circle pour with 92 degrees brewing water. You'll notice I'm putting a bit of fresh water in here to decrease the temperature to 85 degrees for my second pour. My second pour will begin at 40 seconds. And it will consist of a 60 gram circle pour, followed by a 100 gram low, slow center pour. $60 gram circle pour, followed by a 100 gram low, slow center pour. Taking my total water up to 220. I've used a circle pour to increase the level of extraction, a center pour to increase the flow rates through the coffee, and my last pour being a low, slow center pour that decreases the chance of agitation, so it maintains a consistent flow rate throughout the brew and doesn't slow down at the end. I use 85 degrees brewing water for my last pour to decrease the chances of astringency, highlight sweetness and flavor clarity in the cup. I found that in prepping for the April Brewers Cup, even though I tested out so many different pouring structures and recipes, this simple change in temperature was what brought the most flavor clarity and sweetness out for me. And that's why I use temperature on the stage. My brewing time, 2 minutes 15 seconds. Cool. Cheers.
Awesome. So yeah, great to see you again. It's been quite a while now since the actual competition. But super excited to catch up and see what you're up to. Maybe first of all, share a little bit of maybe where you're sitting now and what you're kind of doing in Durban in general.
Cool. Yeah. So nice to check you again, Patrik. Basically, I'm sitting in. We've got like a boardroom training room in our new kind of cafe that's just been open now it's coming on to the second month. So we use it as like a dedicated workspace. It's not a training room yet, but it's going to turn into one. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm sitting, and we do a whole lot of meetings and stuff here. Yeah, in Umhlanga, Durban. And yeah, basically just run 2 sit-down coffee shops. There's a few little takeaway ones in schools and stuff, like takeaway containers, and then a roastery. That's basically what my week looks like: roasting coffee, yeah, making coffees, and just making sure everything runs smoothly.
Yeah, sure. Not too bad, man. I mean, so it's Now Coffee, right? For
Coffee, that's correct.
That don't know, of course,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
And need to always mention the company name, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you're allowed to or not.
No, of course you are. You can self-promote as much as you want to. You just go for it. No, but super cool, right? And I had the pleasure of visiting the coffee shop when I was down there as well, right? And I want to say, and maybe we can talk a little bit about it. I thought that because I visited a few different coffee shops in Durban, and then I went to Cape Town as well, and I felt that your shop felt very, let's say, progressive and kind of international within the context of, let's say, Durban specialty coffee. I do want to share a little bit about where kind of the coffee scene in South Africa in general, and also, of course, in your city is today.
So yeah, what you're saying is quite intentional. So like a lot of Now Coffee actually started. I came back from working overseas on the yachts as a deckhand. While I was overseas, I'm really into coffee. So every place we stopped off at, Barcelona, when we were in the south of France, you know, I always used to, anytime I got, even if I was on night shift, like Barcelona, I'd finish night shift at like 8 o'clock in the morning. Straight away, I'll get changed, walk out and go wander around to all the coffee shops there, the specialty coffee shops. So when we came back this side to Durban and I grew up here, I wanted it to take inspiration from overseas. We didn't want to just be another coffee chain as such, you know. So that is quite intentional, and that's where the roastery side of it came in, because I wanted to roast our own coffee so we have access to better green and all of that stuff, which is something that in Durban and KZN, it kind of, we're very behind here. So yes, I would say we're progressive, and there's a few places here that are progressive. But Durban, like, if you see something happening in Cape Town, like 10 years later, it's going to start happening in Durban. So we've always tried to position ourselves in a place where we a step in the right direction. And we've tried not to be too far in the right direction, because then we'll push customers away. We've tried to be like one step out of their comfort zone. Then we shift the comfort zone and we take another step of it until we can actually push it towards that side of where it is, like what coffee's like in Europe. The coffee scene in Durban is different. There's a few things that we've tried to change, and I don't want to throw people under the bus by mentioning what they are, but like there's a few trends that the way drinks are poured here are very different. There's like made up drinks that like the general population thinks is a real drink now, because every coffee shop does it, and when we're the only coffee shop that doesn't do it, they like look at us like we're doing it wrong. But we getting there, I think, and we're seeing a change in Durban. We're seeing it head towards more like Cape Town and more like overseas in Europe. We're not there yet, but it's important that like we educate everyone and people start to learn. And yeah, I think a lot of inspiration on how we want to end up is like how you guys are over that side of the world, you know. it's not easy, but we will get there. So we are, it's a lot of work, but I think as I always say, everyone can always taste. So like, no matter if you are an expert or not, everyone knows what their taste buds like or what they don't. And if you do something that, even if people don't think they're going to like it, if you present them with something and they're like, whoa, it's actually tastes a bit better. Like, it doesn't burn my throat for 4 hours after I've had it. It's like, what is this? Oh, I didn't know you get those flavors in coffee. Then they will keep coming back to it. So yeah, that's kind of like where Durban's at. We're getting there one step at a time. Not quite there yet. There's a lot of coffee chains here, big chains. There's Starbucks, all of those places. There's another few local South African chains. But there is a few cool progressive like coffee shops that are very European like popping up. And yeah, that's what we obviously want.
Mm-hmm. What would you say? Because also noticing like when I visited your shop, right? Like you serve some, basically, let's say, we could refer to it as competition style coffee. So like, some quite, expensive, exclusive, rare coffees. What would you say is like the main, let's say, coffee beverage people are actually drinking? Like, because there's always a difference between like, this is what you as an owner want people to drink, and this is what maybe most of them are drinking. And what's the kind of, let's say, trend or do they like really heavy coffee? Do they like lighter roasted, darker roasted? Like what's the tea?
So the general trend, it's weird because it changes on different days. So we try like to push people towards, so milk-based beverages are like, yeah, they in Durban and South Africa, they're the most popular thing. So all milk-based beverages, espresso, not popular at all. But basically, depending on like, we found that with takeaways, so in takeaway cups and stuff, people edge towards the larger milk-based beverages, so like a latte. We serve everything as a double shot. We don't like, I know people do like some do single shot, but it's a standard. No matter what you order from us, it's a double, unless you specify that once you want a single. So with takeaway stuff, we see that's the most popular thing. But in the sit-down shops, actually flat whites are the most popular thing. So, and we serve that in a 180 ml cup, double shots, 180 ml cup. And basically, it's funny how that trend on the same premises, we've got two spots on the same premises. The one is the sit-down shop and the other one's the takeaway shop. So it's the exact same location. The takeaway one serves more lattes. The sit-down shop serves more flat whites. And it's literally in the same location. So it's like, that's the kind of difference we see. We try and push people towards more like shorter milk-based beverages. And we have actually seen an increase in filter. So we do filter in both our sit-down locations. We have seen an increase in that. The other thing that is very nice to see is we've started actually selling a lot more like competition lots. We've seen a lot more demand for them. And what we've done is we've kind of pushed people that wouldn't normally taste them to like tasting them by not charging extra for it. Just like, here's like Obligon from Nestor. Taste this and let me know what you think. And that kind of like blows their brain. So those competition things, we hold on to them and we almost use it as like something that can show someone this is how coffee can taste. We're still struggling to sell washed like African coffees and like washed coffees in general.
Why do you think that is?
I think people don't like, they don't appreciate as much as because of the flavor profile of it, and maybe lots of guys have milk with it. Naturals kind of punch through the milk a bit better, so we find it very easy to sell single origin naturals, but single origin washed coffees not so much. Personally, I like washed coffees. That's my favorite. But that is a general trend that we see. So like, a good example is we have a washed Ugandan coffee. and a naturally ground coffee from the exact same farm, the exact same lot, everything like that. And we have finished the natural, and we've still got like at least half a bag of the washed. So it just sells a lot faster. And I think like for us anyway, serving competition coffee is more about trying to open up people's eyes than it is to try and make more money on it. It's like, this is what makes us different. This is how coffee can taste. This is when the farmers intentionally process the coffee like this. And to see that, like, I know lots of our baristas love it. Like a customer walk up there and say, "Oh, what coffee do you recommend?" And they try to throw competition coffee straight in front of them, which we've actually tried to push them away from doing, because you can't just go from someone not drinking a porter to all of a sudden having this high-end competition coffee. Because then after that, if you try to give them a wash Kenyan, they're going to be, "Oh, this smells nice as the other thing." You kind of have to step them one step at a time. But we like doing it and serving it because we think it just helps open up people's minds. And that's very important in the space that we're in, and in Durban and South Africa. I think it's important to expose people to what coffee can do. And that way, like, it pushes everyone in the right direction.
Absolutely. And I think it's something that is very important here as well in Europe, coffee-wise. I think there's always this challenge of making people excited, keeping people's attention and excitement high as well, so they kind of come back for more. And I totally agree with you with the fact that we had this conversation about, let's say, infused coffees and other styles of coffee in the industry now as well. But I think what you said about you can't really start them off up here, because then they're not going to be interested in, let's say, the normal stuff. I think that's very true. And I mean, I want to remember myself where, there was a time where I'm still very excited about that, but your first wash Ethiopian coffee was like fantastic, right? And it's kind of a shame for people to not have that experience. If their first experience is peach infused Colombian coffee or whatever that is, then it will be very hard for them to go back and like really appreciate that. So we kind of want to, people to remember that we also gone through that journey, and it was kind of nice to do that step by step, right? So
100%.
For sure. Yeah. Let's touch a little bit on the filter coffee, and then also like segue a little bit into the April Brewers Cup as well, right? Because I also I'm pretty sure, like, based on the coffee shops that I visited in Durban, like 3-4 of them, I think you're the only one making pour over, from what I saw, and maybe you are the only one. Maybe there's other one or two, but very rare in general, right? So like batch brew, if there was filter coffee, otherwise like Americano, right? So like, what's your kind of relationship to, let's say, pour over filter coffees? And this is segueing a little bit to your recipe, as something I know I mentioned to everyone in the competition as well, is that the ratios you guys are using are quite different from what I'm used to. Obviously you made that really tasty, right? But do you want to walk us through a little bit about like general, let's say, brewing ratios when it comes to filter coffee, and maybe segue into a little bit about the recipe as well?
Cool. Yeah. So you are right. There is a few places doing filter in Durban, but off the top of my head, I can think of like 3. So like, and this is within an hour radius of Durban. So yeah, it's not a popular thing, as you mentioned there, except for batch. And personally, I love filter. It's how I drink coffee all day. Every morning I drink at least 2 cups of filter. I actually kind of stay away from milk a little bit. So it's the way I enjoy to drink it. So that's why I think it's important to serve it that way. And I think it's the only way that you really get a true essence of a coffee. That's why I also want our team to be exposed to that. And I want to expose people in Durban to that. How that kind of ties into what you just said is very important, because when serving people coffee here, if we went with a long ratio, they're so used to it. It's a funny thing, but in South Africa, like, I don't know, people are very like taste centric and like strength centric. They use the word strength. which to me, we've dealt with it so much. Right from the first day we opened our shop, the first thing that a person came and said to me is they said, I want a big cup with a strong coffee. And we were like, yo, it's like, you kind of going against it. Like the more milk we put with it, the less strong the coffee's going to be. So it's been something we've had to deal with from like day one. And what you notice is, so we traditionally pull a 1 to 15 in our store in terms of ratios. That's our go-to. And then how we tweak it from there is we tweak the dose. So by tweaking the dose, we'll extend the ratio or decrease the ratio just by tweaking the dose. Not by changing the yield. That's how we do it in store. So if a coffee is tasting like, okay, it's a natural, and we want to like stretch it out a little bit and go to like a 1 to 17, we'll bring down that dose to like maybe let's say 18 or less, you know? So, but in South Africa, it's like if we serve something like that, the feedback that we get from someone is they say weak, I couldn't taste much, like that kind of thing. So it kind of like pushes us towards the slightly tighter ratio. In comp, I use the 1 to 13.3. But the interesting part about this is that we would never have normally served a coffee in that ratio. I would never, it was actually, my starting ratio was a 1 to 15. So there's a 16 gram dose to a 240 yield. What actually happened in prepping for comp is that I was trying to practice doing 3 pour-overs at once, which is a tough thing. Not used to doing that. And in doing so, I forgot to fill up the kettle, refill the kettle, because obviously if you're doing 3 brews, you have to fill up the kettle every single time. And then that mistake led to me brewing one with the correct dose to yield that I was going with, and then one with the tighter one. And then we tasted them side by side, and we're like, whoa, with this coffee, we kind of think, because it's such a delicate coffee, maybe this tighter one is what we need to brew on stage. That's kind of why we went. That's why we went that route. Whether it's the right route to go or not, I don't know. Because after the comp, I tested with the coffee, the Ethiopian that we won in the comp. I tested like much longer ratios, like we suggested, and I was like, yo. Okay, this is interesting. I'm tasting very different flavor notes and perception of this coffee to what I tasted if I brewed a tighter ratio. So then it confused me a lot. I must be honest. But yeah, with doing it, that was the mistake that led to me brewing that tight ratio. And I know a lot of other people in comp also brew tight ratio. I know that I've been in conversation with some people before in Joburg, and they were brewing 1 to 12 ratios with and then they were giving me feedback on the coffees that the coffee is tasting under extracted and all of that stuff. And then I'm like, okay, well, what are you brewing? Oh, 1 to 12. So I've seen there is that trend. We traditionally don't do it. We start the 1 to 15. I know you guys do like a 1 to 17 there.
It depends. I mean, I think I wouldn't say that a 1 to 15 is something that I've been doing quite a lot as well. I would say that's probably the lowest I would personally go from a ratio perspective. And I remember in the competition, like basically telling all of you in the final afterwards, like we have to discuss these ratios, because you said you're right. Like some people were down to 1 to 12, it's an interesting conversation, this whole under and over extracted point. And I moved away from using those terms in general, because I think it's a bit confusing. But I mean, it's really comes down to like preference and perspective, of course. And I think whenever we do these competitions, it's the same in Colombia, Hong Kong. There's always a few stylistic things that kind of everyone in the competition is doing based on where they are. And in South Africa, that was for sure like these really like smaller ratios, right? Which was quite interesting. But I mean, arguably you made a tasty cup of coffee, right? So you can do that with a lower ratio as well, for sure. I want to talk a little bit about, so you in the video you're showing this little hack you do with the water temperature. So you fill in basically just cold water into your hot kettle. You bring that temperature down. How did you kind of come to that idea? Is this something you've been doing for a long time, or where did you get the inspiration?
Actually, so funny enough, temperature was the one variable that I never played with. So I brew filter every day, as I said, at least twice a day. But through that time, leading up to the comp, I played with every single variable, like pouring structure, ratios, everything you can possibly think of, agitation. And what actually happened was I started getting to the end of the bag of coffee that we had for prep, like within the first day or two, and I'd almost finished the coffee, and I had just made terrible tasting cups. So then I was like, yo, I'm playing with too many variables at once here. Like, I'm overcomplicating this thing. Why am I doing this? Go back to what works well. Like, then I went back to the drawing board and I started from scratch. And I'm like, well, I haven't played with temperature. Why haven't I played with temperature? It's been the only one that I've kept it constant 92 degrees. And I thought, I've heard stuff about temperature. Like, I've never played with it with pouring. Let me do a bit of research. I did a bit of research. I thought about it. I'm like, okay, well, you're going to go on stage. The judges are going to drink the coffee on stage. The first round, I looked at the first round. Obviously, people brew it at the same time. I thought, okay, what's going to make my cup stand out a bit more? We all know that you can't drink coffee at like 92 degrees as it comes out, right? You're not going to perceive the nuances and the sweetness that you want to. So the first thing I thought, okay, well, if I brew a slightly colder cup, naturally it's going to be standing next to two other potentially hotter cups, and they're going to be judged at the same time. So the sweetness will naturally be higher, probably, and it'll be easier for the judges to perceive the coffee a bit. So that was the first thought I had. The second thought I had, I was like, okay, a lot of the time, the problem that we get is sometimes the cup ends up being a bit astringent in the finish. The coffee that we had, I found that like, if you didn't brew it like perfectly, you kind of edged a lot towards, you could have got like an unpleasant finish. So those were the two things I thought, let me play it safe. Let me try and figure this out. So then I started playing around with temperature, and originally I brewed the first brew at 92 and then dropped it to 87. But then I kind of found it wasn't giving much of a difference. So then I dropped it to 85. But I wanted to counteract that by making sure the brew didn't drop too much in temperature. That's why in the video you see I did like a longer pour, so that it maintained like it was more constant in temperature. And since then I've actually been doing it a lot. I really find it like heightens the sweetness, the flavor clarity, the finish in the cup is, to me, like the first time I did it, it was miles better. And it's something that I really didn't think about temperature before the comp, and I played with everything else but temperature. And the last one I think, let me try temperature, was the one thing that actually gave me like a really tasty cup. So yeah, but obviously on the stage I had two kettles. So I don't want to mess around. Yeah, but when I do it at home and stuff, I just pour a bit of water in, and then I check the temperature and make sure it's at the one I want, and then use that.
Which I think it's a great hack, right? And it's something that, again, like not everyone has two kettles at home. I don't have two kettles at home. Makes perfect sense, right? You mentioned it a little bit beforehand as well, but and it's a question I kind of ask a lot, because you move away from that first round, one coffee, final three coffees at the same time, right? How difficult, is that, and what was your kind of thought process moving into having to brew more coffees?
That was probably the most difficult part, I must be honest. So to figure out the time, so my recipe actually changed from the first round to the second round. Not with brewing structure and anything. The only thing that changed was my time between pours. So, and I remember you actually saying after the comp that my cup tasted better in the first round than the second round. And I know that it did. It was something that I was aware of, but I had no other way around it. To brew three cups at the same time, I had to increase that time between pours. So I originally had 40 seconds time between pours in the first round, And the second one, the only time that actually worked and gave me enough time to complete everything was 1:10 between pours. And that was, I had to practice so many times that even like practicing. So obviously I had the comp, then went and started practicing it. Even I think almost every single time that I did it in practice, I messed it up. Because I'm so used to pouring and then starting and pouring the second one. And then you get to the third one and you need to pour the first one again. So It was just something that I kind of just felt like, okay, let me play it safe. Let me make sure that the time is actually achievable and that I have a bit of waiting time that after I finish the pour there, I can move on to the next one. Even if it negatively affects my cup slightly, the trade-off was that at least I managed to get the pours right and hope that it still tasted good enough to do well. But that was definitely the most tricky part of the comp. And I didn't think it would be tricky because often in the cafe, I'll do 2 pour-overs at the same time. But to add a third one into it is dramatically harder than doing 2 at the same time.
It makes it a lot more difficult, and I think it's something that kind of like you've been experiencing now as well. Like you don't really understand that until you go through it. And I usually say, and I think this is true in the World Brewers Cup as well, for example, where the recipe that wins is the best recipe to brew 3 coffees at the same time. It's not necessarily the best recipe to brew 1 coffee at the same time, right? I often find there is a difference. So that's something that I think people should have in mind, right? And it's one of those, fun things with competing, right? Like it should be a little bit of a challenge to do that. But there's a lot of people that are adopting, they train on one recipe to find that kind of perfect cup of coffee, and then they actually have to slightly move away from it in order to work well in a competition, because you're judged on consistency, right? So there's really no way around that. So now super exciting. I mean, a little bit, because this was so AeroPress competition has been in South Africa for some time, right? But there isn't really any official SCA Brewers Cup competition, to my knowledge. So this was like one of the first kind of, let's say, brewing competitions event that was in AeroPress. In a way, what's your general kind of experience and takeaway?
Yeah, so that's part of why I actually entered it. It was like we don't have access to any Brewers Cup here, and no registered Brewers Cup. There are, like in Durban, there's a few small coffee competitions that happen every now and then. Like little local cafes will hold a latte art comp. We've held ourselves. We've held an internal barista comp where it was espresso, milk base, and filter, like as part of it. Filter substituted for the signature beverage. So we've done that. There is cafes and stuff that do that, but there's no cafe that I've ever seen do a brewer's version of it, and there is no registered brewer's version of it. So and I think actually that's why it was like such. I mean, the tickets came available to enter the comp, and I was straight away on there, and we bought for me and 2 of the other guys that competed. And I think within half an hour I checked, and there was only like 2 tickets left. So there was such a demand for it, and the calibers of baristas that actually entered. One of them was an ex-South African barista champ. One had just come second in the South African barista champs. So. It just shows the demand for it in the country, and the fact that those guys are willing to compete in it. It shows how it's not a registered event, but it just shows like there should be a registered event, and these guys wanting to do it shows that like everyone it wasn't just the local home brewers kind of coming there and brewing. It was professionals, So I think there is a demand, and I wish there was. And it was part of the reason why I entered it, because it's how I drink coffee. So if there was a way that I was going to enter, and something that in running a business that I could do, because I do it anyway. So that was the only way I would actually enter a comp. And I think that's what it brought, obviously, to South Africa, which is very cool.
I think that's one of the, like, I really felt that in general. I think throughout event obviously hosted by Coffee Magazine. I mean, they're kind of the reason why I ended up there in the first place. And it's just so, like, there was so much, let's say, energy, excitement. Like, people want to compete. Like, they want to have that official event. They want to go to a world championship, which I thought was very inspiring. Like, for me, it's interesting because you have, baristas in this part of the world that just isn't, seemingly not so into it, don't really competitions. I don't know. Maybe it's too accessible in a way. So it's like inspiring to come to a place where it's like, no, like, these guys, they really want to do this, and I really hope that they, eventually you guys get the official formats, right? Because it really is so much fun. And I think it's a great way also to put, South Africa on the map coffee wise. Which we talked a lot about during that event as well. And also, like, locally, to get people to understand that it's like, no, but like, South African coffee is a thing, not just here, but like also internationally. Like, we can be competitive and we can do good stuff. And so I'm super excited to see where that will come. Has there been any kind of development on that side that you're aware of, or?
Not that I'm aware of, to be honest. I think the powers above, the people in SASA, I should maybe reach out to them and ask, just out of curiosity, but nothing that I've heard of as of yet. Coffee comp in South Africa, we've had like a little bit of a turbulence kind of past, and the recent Scars Abroad kind of helped a lot with that. I know there was a stage during COVID and slightly after COVID where there was like no comp. Luckily, there was a good injection of very professional coffee baristas coffee professionals into the Scars Abroad last year, and they were quite connected in the industry and they made it happen. So hopefully, there's a lot of excitement there, and the people that are involved with Scars are all volunteers, and they are very well-respected individuals in this coffee industry in South Africa. So I think if anyone can do it, it would be them. I need to reach out to a few of them and find out what the story is. But I definitely think there's a demand, as you saw. I mean, like, it wasn't just like local Durban home baristas coming to compete in it. It was guys from Joburg, guys from Cape Town flying in to compete. Like all of that. It would be exciting. I would look forward to it. I don't know if I'll compete again, but maybe.
No?
Maybe.
Why would you not compete again?
I don't know. It was, when that comp was going on, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I've just set myself up for failure here. Like, there's so much going on.
Okay.
Yeah. There's so much going on. To be honest, I didn't expect to make it past the first round. I mean, I was against two guys that had just come back from WBC, one for barista and one for cup tasters. So, like, I didn't expect to make it past there. And it was, I don't want to say this in the thing, but it was like when I saw I was against them, I was like, it's kind of a relief for me. Like, I can lose respectfully to them, if that makes sense.
Sure.
For myself, I'm like, if I lost to these guys, like, that's perfectly fine. I wouldn't feel hard on myself. I'll be like, it's not me losing to some random person I've never heard of before. So, but coffee comp is a bit stressful. So I don't know, maybe people always say the bug bites. So.
Yeah. I feel like in my experience, it's, once you get started, it's kind of hard not to. And I think it's, for at least for my own sake, it's simply because it actually is a lot of fun. And I think if it's a little bit of a matter of perspective. For some people, it gets very stressful. It gets very serious. Not that it's not serious for me, but it's also like, it's this point to like, or opportunity to meet people that are into the same thing that you're into, and you get to serve coffee to, in this case, 3 people that will actually be excited to taste it. Which is, as in a daily operation in a coffee shop, when do you get 10 minutes to serve 3 perfect coffees and talk about them?
Yeah.
Never,
Yeah.
right? It's not really a situation you're in, right? So
Yeah.
I really just appreciate having the opportunity to like serve coffee to people that, you know, they're going to sit there, they're going to listen to me, they're going to drink it, right? Regardless of what's happening, because they have to, right? So no, but let's see. I mean, if there is if I get the announcement of an official SCA, then I'll call you and I'll tell you to compete.
Okay.
If you obviously if you want to, right? But I'll push you in that direction as well, because I think
it's cool.
I mean, because you did a good job. Like I still remember the presentation as being like I was quite I was very surprised over how, because I noticed also the night before, right? I mean, we talked about this over soccer as well, where it's like, yeah, maybe you should practice. Like you were a little bit stressed, but then you walked up on stage and you were super comfortable, right? I think that was part of the, you know, obviously a tasty cup of coffee, but also like a presentation where it just flew really naturally and made a lot of sense. So I think you have a lot of potential in moving forward competition wise, right? So it would be a shame to cut it short without trying the real thing.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know, like, to be honest, when I was on stage, it didn't go like that when I practiced it. So before obviously playing football and all that stuff, we went straight and we did a few sets. Then we played football, went home, and woke up at like 4:00 in the morning and ran a few sets. But I think it's an important thing that lots of in sports, as in like coffee comp is taking a sport. Lots of individuals are very good when they're practicing, but then the minute it comes to like performing, they perform worse than they practice. Which I find the people that have like BMT, as you'd say, big match temperament, and they can practice one way and then they go on stage and it just like flows way better than practice. Those are the guys that end up like doing really well on the comp stage, you know? 100%, so that is an important thing.
You did also mention the one argument for why you should compete again, right? Because you clearly have that possibility, and I think it's a very real thing. We see it a lot in World Championships. Great examples. Like everyone there competing, they're obviously very good at what they do, but you still see people coming to stage, and you look at them and you go, like, what happened here? And it's not that they're not amazing at what they do. It's that kind of inability to bring that thing to the stage at that very moment, right? Because that's what's difficult in competing. It's doing something, delivering something at a very specific time, right? If they tell you have 1 year to brew this amazing cup of coffee and serve it, I'm sure you're going to brew one of the best cups of coffees in the world, right? But you have this, you have 10 minutes, you have one time, it has to be perfect. That's where people go wrong, right? So, I really enjoyed watching your presentation. I thought it was really, really impressive, especially for someone that hasn't been competing, in the past in that kind of format. So I think that should be super cool to see you do it again, right?
Thank you. Thanks.
Anyhow, I think we're gonna wrap up because I don't want to steal too much of your time. Also, do you have any like last things you wanna add? Self promotion included, or?
No, not too much. Just
fair enough.
Yeah, we just from our side, we, as we spoke about briefly in the beginning, we're just trying to push stuff forward in Durban, South Africa, as much as we possibly can. So, if anyone watching this is in Durban and stuff. And it'd be cool to meet you guys. But we obviously inspire to be more like April and more like the guys overseas to what we can be. So that's something that and it's cool to have been on a comp stage and got all the feedback we did from you and the judges. It's really, really helpful. So thank you for coming to South Africa and helping us there. Because at the end of the day, we want to grow as an industry, we have to grow together. So that's an important thing that I think people in South Africa and in the specialty coffee community here need to know. And there are a few that already know that and that we work with. It's just thank you for your time. It'd just be cool to catch up again. Maybe when we're down that side or next time we come to to South Africa?
I come down again. Like I have to say, it's also like it's because it's like in my own personal journey, it hasn't been on. I just haven't had the opportunity to come down, right? But I think it's especially Durban. I mean, an amazing place also outside of coffee, right? Like there's so much else to do. Just like beautiful nature, tasty food, this dynamic place, really friendly people. So I think it's definitely like a spot that more people should go to. And I think the coffee scene is really coming, right? Also like Cape Town, it's a small community, but people are pushing forward. So I have a lot of high hopes for like all of South Africa moving forward. I think it's we're going to see more and more people coming down that way as well. Hopefully, maybe even a world championship at some point. That could be really cool to actually get everyone down there. But we'll see what the future brings. I'll make sure to stay tuned. And I'm sure we'll come back to South Africa again, and then we'll definitely catch up.
I hope so. Can have play a small football.
No, for sure. Yeah, I have to make up for bad performance last time. Anyway, I love that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Really appreciate you competing, and taking the time and representing. Super cool. And I'm sure we will talk soon again.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks,
awesome.
Patrik. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, man.
Thank you so much to Pascal for taking the time to be with us. That was all for the South African edition of the April Brewers Cup. We hope to be back in the future, and after that competition, we actually hosted competitions in both Colombia and in Brussels, Belgium as well. So we're going to make sure to catch up with those winners as well within the near future. With that said, we, as always, want to thank you for watching. We're super happy to hear any thoughts or recommendations on where the April Brewers Cup should go next. If there's a different kind of format you're interested as well in terms of the competition, we're always happy to hear feedback and take that conversation together with you. Now with that, we just want to thank you very much for watching as always, and wish you a good day. We want to give a special thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. It's because of you that we are able to continue to make these videos. And we want you all to feel free to always come with suggestions and ideas on the content that you want to see, because we are doing this for you and because of you. Thank you from all of us here at April.